Lee Bowman here, calling the Nickel Plate Review Committee December 20th, 2023 to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Kay, could you please do the roll call?
Yes. Mr. Block, are you with us? Mr. Block, are you with us?
I am. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Bowman,
Here.
Ms. Nieves,
Here.
Ms. Stoller.
Here.
Thank you.
Next up for the agenda is the approval of the minutes from 11/15/23. I will have to abstain from a vote on this because I was not present. But all those in favor of approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Oh, thank you. Can we get a
Second.
motion to approve?
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion approved. All right, and we will go to the District South proposal.
Thank you. For the record, Ross Hillary, Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Fishers. Before you is NPRC 23-6, which is District South. It is a 3.36 acre development. Here you can see on the site, it's a combination of multiple lots south of South Street, including a parcel that is owned by the City of Fishers. The zoning for this property is VC Village Center. North is the downtown core, which currently includes Village Center as well as a parking garage within the downtown core. East of this is VC Village Center, which includes some small offices. South of this is Village Center, which is single-family residential homes that were built by Gradison. And west of this is TCR, which is our town center residential, single-family residential, shown in blue. District South is a mixed-use development that plans to offer 5 buildings in total. We have 1 4-story building and 4 3-story buildings. The buildings are multifamily as well as mixed use. And the 4-story building is shown here in blue, just to orientate you on the site map. And then the 3-story buildings are shown here in green. The primary plat, secondary plat, and ILP has gone through TAC starting in October of this year. And right-of-way and streetscapes requirements are reviewed through the TAC process as well. I'm going to go through both buildings at this point now. So here's the elevation of the northeast building. As I mentioned, these 4 around the edge are similar in nature, but I will show you all 4 of those. Here's the elevation of the northeast building. This is a 3-story mixed-use building with a combination of masonry, hardy plank, and a cast stone with aluminum and metal coping for details. South of that building, here you can see an isometric view. This shows the building modulations that are required, as well as window placements, primary entrances, and balconies. The southeast building, which is south of the one just shown, is similar in nature, but this will be a full residential building. Generally, the building is the same form and function as the previous one. The southwest building will also be residential in nature. You'll see a different color palette on all 4 of these. I'll show that again as well. And the northwest building will also be residential. In their packet, you can see a breakdown of their color palettes. So we have a combination of brick and the fiber cement board or hardy plank for each one of these buildings. Labeled as Building A, B, Building B West, and Building C. So these are the 4 buildings around. As mentioned, they all will have a cast stone base as well as aluminum and metal coping for details. I will make note that all 4 of these buildings have at least 50% masonry on all 4 sides, which we've seen a bit of deviation from in the past. So I do want to make note of that on behalf of the petitioner. Here's the elevation of the 4-story mixed-use building that's in the middle. Similar in nature to the other buildings, will be a mixture of brick, cement, hardy plank, aluminum metal coping, and as just mentioned, all four sides of this are at least 50% masonry. Here is an isometric view as well, showing the modulations, the balconies, HVAC screening that's required on the roof that is accomplished with a taller parapet wall. The first image was included in the staff report. Staff asked them to kind of give us a view of South Street and how it interacts with the street itself. So you can see the four-story building in the middle. On the left is that northeast building, and on the right is going to be that northwest building. And as staff was having discussions with them, we're trying to figure out additional ways for the buildings to really relate to South Street. And so we're going to ask you guys tonight to discuss that. But in the past couple of days, we did come back with an option to show some doors and entryways along South Street, which I think is a good start moving forward on how we can activate South Street with those buildings. So I do want to show you that. The second picture below was not included in the staff report. What was presented before was a building that has windows adjacent to South Street, and this changing those windows to potentially doors for activation of the street. Staff did receive public comments on this. This isn't a public hearing though, but I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of this. These were also provided to petitioner, and we had responses. So we dealt and met with Tom Kosiak in the past at 8712 Morgan Drive. I believe both these residents were on the public meetings that the developer had with the areas surrounding. He had questions regarding garages and carports. As you can see on the site plan, we've deviated from garages and carports, so it will all be surface parking. We'll have a large berm on the south side of the development, which satisfied Tom. Lauren Barnes had some concerns about windows and balconies facing residential. The developer did minimize the windows that did face the south facades, and we'll add additional partitions along the south railings to kind of buffer that view. Other than that, those were the only comments that we received from the public at this time. With that, we do have 4 waivers that we're requesting on behalf of the petitioner. Figure 1.3 development standard side setbacks for all 4 of the outside buildings have a setback of 15 feet. So we're requesting those to be as presented. The taller building in the middle exceeds the height allowed. So this area VC has a maximum height of 3 stories or 42 feet, and the petitioner is proposing a 4-story, 55-foot building. This is very similar to a lot of other projects that we've had here, but we're also requesting a waiver from the requirement that 75% of the masonry along public right-of-ways is masonry. They are providing at least 50% on all sides. And again, surface parking is not allowed by right in VC, and you guys have that option to provide a waiver for that. With that, staff is happy to answer any questions. You have the developer and the engineer here as well.
Thank you, Ross. Petitioner, would you guys like to make any comments before we discuss?
Yeah, just quickly kind of reiterate back to the beginning when we sat down with the city and discussed this project. The mayor and their staff and planning staff goal was to try to have a little bit lower density than what is in the core of downtown, and so we tried to accomplish that and then also be thoughtful to our neighbors. We had meetings with all adjacent property owners, multiple in some cases, and we really have made an effort to try to reduce what was the felt impact to all of our neighbors. And including the 4-story building, we've pulled back both the north and south end to reduce it down to 3 stories. And as Ross mentioned, all of our balconies faced east-west, and so there are no balconies that face to the south, the adjacent homeowners, or to the owners to either side, the east or the west of what essentially is behind the buildings. But in anticipation of future development, we really tried to design buildings that we felt that were four-sided architecture in an effort to make sure that we fit in with maybe what's coming in the future on either side, including some connectivity. So we've made every effort to try to be great neighbors, accomplish the goals that the mayor and his team have set out on kind of as it gets a little further from the core to reduce the density, but not have a huge amount of surface parking lots. And so we've tried to spread parking out. And then what I think is really cool about this neighborhood is the trail connectivity. And we've got an outdoor plaza along the main building. It'll have a water feature, pergola, outdoor lighting, seating. It'll be really beautifully designed and constructed, and it'll connect directly to the Cheney Creek Trail. And we will make improvements to that trail and then work with the city, because to us it's critically important also then to connect to the Nickel Plate. So we're excited about being the first project in downtown that has connectivity to both trails for our residents and employees. And this is a great mix of both. The first floor of the main building will have an anchor tenant, and they'll have about 60 employees, which exceeded the original expectation for that space. And then consistent with the mayor's goals to support smaller spaces for smaller businesses, Ross mentioned the two front buildings on South Street have small business commercial studio suites. And so that's a really kind of a neat dynamic to create some energy to this neighborhood. And of course, can answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I will start with committee comments. Do you have anything you'd like to?
Yeah, I'd like to go back and, I don't know, can we bring up that slide along South Street? You know, that, I guess what I'd like to see is, yeah, let's bring that up. I want to see that a little bit more. That one.
And I'll make a comment as you think about this and kind of give you the existing condition and what we tried to accomplish here. Across the street is the parking garage.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time, there are power lines across South Street. And so when we were thinking about creating kind of a unique, dynamic neighborhood feel, we really wanted to kind of focus also internally on what was happening in District South, including, if you're looking here, what's not shown is to what I'll call stage right of the large mixed-use building is our plaza. And it's going to be really fantastic, and I think it is going to kind of pull some of that energy in that you're looking for, and then the two mixed-use buildings. But the initial intent really was to focus internally, and then as the plan evolved, we agree we can get some engagement on South Street, but that corridor with the parking garage across the street, we also tried to balance that with bringing the energy internal to the neighborhood.
No, I can respect that, and I remember those power lines when I went out there to view this property. It stuck in my mind. I don't think I've ever been in a 1950s trailer, and I never ever thought it was
Yeah,
2050.
that's fortunately gone, and the power lines will be gone, and that, to me, is a fantastic enhancement
Yeah.
to what we can imagine for South Street. But we were kind of design intentional about focusing internal to the neighborhood.
I was going to say, I remember where this property came from, and this is definitely an improvement. But, you know, when I look at it, is there any way to put like some shrubbery between those trees, some different types of things to, I don't know,
Oh,
some
yeah,
type
this-
of art?
Yeah, there is fair amount of streetscape consistent with what you'll see downtown. Trees, plantings, planters. Ross, am I correct? And I don't want to miscategorize.
I will
that.
say that this elevation is not reflective of all the required like landscaping and streetscape stuff. This is kind of just an exercise to see the buildings next to each other and that scale. But other than that, you know, we do require our standard streetscape and pretty substantial landscaping as well. So
I think one of the things that we're tasked with on this committee is to discuss the engagement and the pedestrian involvement in developments. And I think this is, we have a real opportunity here to take that and spread it further south. And there's so many businesses along Lantern, and I could just picture this being an old style downtown type feel I'm gonna just put this out here right now. My vote is gonna be to continue this after this discussion. And I think there is so much opportunity lost on the South Street side. The other thing, I mean, I would like to focus on this. This is my big focus. This is what I feel is lacking, is this right here. The buildings are great. I like the materials. I love the over 50% masonry. I think there is so much great here with this development. I think there is just so much lacking on this side that could bring in so much more. And longevity for the development
Sure.
too, right? The more you activate this side, and I understand it faces a parking garage. That's not exciting. But you want this to be exciting, right?
Sure.
So how do we take the excitement of 116th Street and continue it here on South Street? That is what I pictured this to be.
Sure.
And I think, connectivity, and with the further development of residential on the south side, this is the road they're gonna be taken in, right? So you want to draw them to want to take this street versus just 116th Street.
Yeah.
Have multiple options. I think I would like to see more.
Sure. I agree with you, and I think you'll be very encouraged when you see this. To Ross's point, doesn't show any of our South Street improvements, including we have brick pillars on both sides of both roads that will have like a lantern fixture on top to really create a cool neighborhood feel. We have the plaza and water feature and bench seating up on South Street, and there's a lot that is not reflective here. This was to demonstrate those elevations. That was an error on my part to underwhelm you with the actual plan.
Well, no, there is a level of this committee that is here just for the buildings, but
Yes.
that is the building and the development
I
as a
agree.
whole, architecturally, pedestrian connectivity. There's more than just the buildings.
Absolutely.
Here, so I think I would like to see more before I'm willing to say, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is great. I think there's a lot of awesomeness and greatness here, but I think that we're just not there with what we're seeing.
With what you're seeing, I think is the key, because we have the street lights, we have catenary
But
lights.
this is all we have to go on.
I know, I agree with what
I'm
you're
gonna pull
saying.
up the planting.
I don't
plan
mean to
so
be
you can-
difficult. I
agree with you, and
One
I
thing I'd
want
like
to
to-
show you.
Make a comment on this, and what you said stuck with me. This is where Cheney meets MPT.
Yes.
We need to have that stated there somehow, some way. There's that one big part in the middle of the building. I don't know if you want to put it on your pillars or whatever, but I think that kind of tying those two together somehow.
Sure.
And we're working on that trail
That's an
plan.
opportunity.
It will, and I think same thing, when you see the trail plan, that's not a part of this presentation, same thing, we are trying to create a unique experience, because I want folks to go, gosh, we go to District South or both to the Nickel Plate Trail or both, or down to Cheney Creek. And I think you'll at least, it's a much better starting point than what's reflected. Ross will show a little, and the 2D is always difficult, but we have crosswalks from the garage, because I think, so
And
engagement.
please
from-
don't take this as me not considering hearing that this
Sure.
is under consideration and that you understand the importance. I don't
I
feel
do.
like that's happening at all. I just think when
Yes.
it's presented here, we need the full picture, and if we
Right.
don't get it, it's really hard to take it to a vote and say,
Sure.
yeah, it's great, but at your promises, which, you know, if I don't see it,
Sure.
it's not a part of the approval, right? So I think from my perspective, I want to see the full picture, and I want to see the engagement and some further activation and understand exactly what that vision is there. Because pedestrians and the surrounding area and the development that's going to continue is a huge factor in approving these projects. So
Sure.
Emily, do you mind if I just make one comment
yes,
real quick?
please.
So I will state that staff really did have them focus on the building elevation, so that's why that was mainly what was presented tonight. What I did not fail, or what I did fail to provide you guys with, which may or may not have helped you, was the landscape plan that's up on the screen right now. Again,
You know that doesn't help us. Right?
yeah, a lot of lines. So I will say, outside of the building elevations, if that's what the focus is on how they activate, we have the required, on-street parking and the landscaping that goes along the front of those buildings. And what Shelby was referencing on the left side of the primary 4-story building, that's where you're seeing that public plaza that they're activating, where that crisscross lighting area would be part of right there. And then you can see the trail connection that's going to go over to the left to Cheney Creek. Thanks, Vanna, right,
Vanna,
up there.
that's very nice.
And there's water. We've got a fountain at District South. Bill, can you show where the water feature right in the middle there? It's down where the door. Yeah. And that's designed to try to pull people in off of the trails to come visit the plaza. We really want this to be a public space. And the seating that's up on South Street is designed to kind of be the same, is we want that to feel quasi-public plaza for people to come and hang out that are visiting or that live nearby. But I agree with all your comments. I don't take that offensively, because we're trying to accomplish the same things, and that engagement is critical here, because we don't have the same amenities as maybe some of the other projects that have a pool or parking garage, and so we are very heavily focused on pedestrian engagement and that neighborhood feel. I think we can show you we've got a much better plan than those elevations portrayed. And so I just want to try to understand the best way to present that to you.
Well, what if we, and you tell me, Ross, what you think, but what if, let's say we continue this and if we have that all at our disposal, a special meeting of some sort could be addressed. I know it's the holidays, which get hard, but.
Yeah, if there is something specific that you'd want them to provide, whether it's additional, if it's the same elevations and you just want to see how it interacts, that's one direction. But if you want them to change how the buildings are interacting with South Street, I think that would maybe take them some more time. And so either one of those directions. If you're happy with what you're seeing now.
Start talk about the elevations and then take it from there and decide what is next. If there are comments on the elevations. I did not have a lot of commentary on that. I definitely think, 3 stories leading into, it's a good transition into a residential area, urban residential area. So anybody else have any commentary on the elevations?
You said it was 4-story, and then the
Yeah.
sides of it have dropped to 3.
That's right.
Yep, okay.
Stepped back a little bit on each corner
Yep.
to try to reduce that from a 4-story to a 3 to meet the height requirement.
Emily, hey, this is Rich. Am I able to speak?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, you had asked for some comments. I wanted to clarify a couple things. First of all, maybe some compliments. Shelby, I think I like the building elevations a lot, and I actually like the balconies that are being utilized. I think that helps create additional articulation to the buildings. I wanted to get back to maybe 2 clarifying questions. One, when Ross was referring to ways to activate South Street more, I didn't know if the site plan is set in stone, or if part of the thinking was to orient like the big building parallel to South Street so that you have more of the mass along that. Certainly I thought that would create because I think the buildings are attractive, and I think it gives it just that much more frontage and perspective, but I don't know if that is either being referred to or if that's too challenging. I'll ask my second question, which is there was something referenced from one of the neighbors about the balconies and some reference to a discussion that occurred, Shelby, that he said you wouldn't face balconies towards them, but I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, that there weren't going to be balconies, so then that point or that question that came up from the resident does not apply, but I guess so. Can you try and answer both those questions?
Sure. The first one is we're not able to reorient the building, and we worked tirelessly with city staff to come up with the plan we have for. A lot of it is driven by access and egress, and then also the views of the folks who live on both sides of this building in an effort to kind of maximize those views and circulation within the neighborhood. And we're not able to make that first change, but we certainly looked at that multiple times in multiple different ways to arrive here, Rich. The second comment, are you able to see the site plan as we're looking at it with the 4 buildings that are nearest?
Yeah.
So if you look in the
Yes.
corners of both of those buildings to the south, there's little box outs that you can see that are depicting balconies. I don't know if I have a cursor or just so I make sure. Okay, maybe you could.
So if you want to move this one around,
Here you go, and then
we can focus on that one, or?
you see the little square on the other, right there? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right on it, where those balconies are. Yeah, that little square in the corner.
Okay.
Yes. Rich, are you able to see his mouse? Are you able to see Ross's mouse where he's locating?
No, I can't. You can just talk me through it. It's
Well,
okay, sorry.
The balconies on the far south end of the 2 south buildings are on the corner of the building, and so one part of that balcony in the current plan is open to the south. We're gonna add a partition there so that it will no longer be open to the south. So there are currently 4
Got it.
units.
Okay.
Yeah, there are 4 units that would be able to see to the south. We will add a partition so they will not be able to.
Thank you. Okay.
Any further comments from the committee? Okay, so I will ask for a motion.
A motion, you wanted to continue?
That would be my preference. I just want to put that out there. And I would like to see further renderings of what is promised in the connectivity on South Street.
Yeah, I'd like to see those too, and possibly, is this part of the arts district? Does the arts district that we have, does that include part of South, Village South?
That's a good question. I don't think it left the north side of 116th, but I mean, this is all part of the Nickel Plate district itself.
Yeah.
So we see the cultural district designated by the state.
Yeah.
We see that boundary a little bit bigger, but it had to be an area that was already built out. So these single family homes that were there before when we applied did not include in that cultural district.
Okay. I was gonna say if we could include some type of art, like I said,
Sure.
something on the side of that building.
We
I
do.
think that'll help with the engagement as well.
We do have, so I don't know, I don't want to navigate but if you could show the elevation of the buildings on the trail do have a spot for a mural on both buildings, which I think Ross is going to get us there.
While he's doing that, I do want to say I appreciate you working with staff to get to where we are on the buildings, because I do believe the elevations are what we would want and expect and appreciate, so.
Sure, thank you.
I don't want you, I wanna make sure I show appreciation for what you
Yeah,
guys have done
thank
to
you.
get here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Selena, here, you can see on the back of all four
Yeah.
of the buildings, it'll be, I think it's inset even, so it's kind of. Yeah, it's specific to hopefully have murals on the trail facing side of both of those buildings,
Okay,
facing west.
okay. Like I said, I know it may not be included in the cultural district, but I think, like you said, if we can expand that district a little bit, and then also, I think that helps with the engagement that Emily, is concerned about here. So,
We can solidify the square footage amount too, and the Arts and Cultural Commission has a matching grant that could be utilized by a business for something like this, so we can dive into that more too, if that's one of your bullet points.
yeah, I was gonna say, if we could, get the art in this area a little bit, I think that would be helpful. Especially if we have grants available for that. And then, this is my question, this is where I'm struggling. If we delay this and we continue it till next month, how much does that put you behind?
That's a real problem, but
Because
I would imagine
I
every
just, at
developer.
council, I extended things out for you just on Monday night. So that way on
Yes.
some of these projects, because I understand what's going on, and the whole council did.
Yes.
So I wanna go back to, if it's gonna be a real problem,
Mhm.
okay?
Yes.
Ross, how can we fix this problem? Is there any way we can get copies of these and then look at them, approve them before the next meeting, like possibly after the holidays?
Yeah, so to Emily's note, we could have a special meeting scheduled for this. The
Okay,
one thing that
let's-
staff can do, working with engineering, and because we are pretty almost done on the improvement location permit that we talked about earlier, we are happy to do a release of like an ILP pending, like a conditional ILP release, to make sure that we guys get the architectural right, so they can start on site work and stuff.
Yeah.
Outside of that, so that's
Yeah.
something that we can provide.
Is that
Yeah, I wanna
something, just
be-
like within the motion, like we can approve the architectural with, or do we just continue this and then do a special meeting, probably, right?
I would continue it until you have that special meeting.
Yeah.
With staff will
But it won't
already
roll
be.
that permits.
We'll continue with the permitting right now to not hold them up on that end.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
I'm
I
good
don't
with
wanna
that.
hold you guys up. I know
Thank
that
you.
we're having some issues within the community now with this and several other projects. So,
Ours is
and,
ready, I'll say. We're actually ready to start.
okay,
This
so,
is a critical piece to that.
Yeah.
And
You
I
know-
think when you do see, I'm confident it'll be a much better starting point for your
Yeah.
review. And I think you'll feel better about the thoughtfulness. Not to say there aren't areas, and we're committed to the improvements, but I think you'll feel better when you do get to see the plan.
I'm sure we will. I mean, you're clearly passionate about this project, and it means a
Yeah.
lot. So
Yes.
I appreciate that. And, but you have to understand, like,
Of course.
we can't just approve it without
Sure.
knowing what
No problem.
that is
Absolutely.
and what that looks like, because there's no accountability down the road.
Sure,
so I think we have to give 10 days notice of the meeting.
okay.
So if you want me to, I will put something on my calendar in 10 days. My goal is to not hold you up in any way or any form. So let's get that on the calendar as soon as we can get these renderings back to us to allow you to move forward in an efficient manner.
I think yes is my answer, but I always say that before I talk to the architect. I see 'em both,
Architect, he is.
squirming in their chair.
Hi, Chris Hagan, Studio Access. Would a rendered site plan be sufficient, or, I'm not sure if we can update?
Yeah, sorry, Bill with Kimley Horn. I was gonna ask the same question. I've got a small version. I know if your eyes are as bad as mine, it doesn't do you a ton of good, but I'd love to get some feedback from you guys after the meeting. I mean, we
Okay.
can
Sure,
look- I don't know
yeah.
how much time you guys have, but we can look at it now.
Absolutely.
I know not showing the landscape plan up front, probably didn't help. And I would argue too that the building space exhibit, no one will ever see that view because of the parking garage and then whatever else may be coming downtown. So I think to look at that and go, well, that building's a mile you're never gonna see that.
Yeah, I see,
So-
I recognize a lot of people are gonna be coming, I mean, that's the back of that parking garage. But I do think you could get a lot of foot traffic as we continue to build out the village and as we continue to build out the downtown, that you could get more foot traffic on
I think-
there.
And
Yeah.
we've got, I think, a 12-foot wide walk running along our frontage on South Street.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's there, I think it'll be
Yeah.
satisfied, but you haven't seen it, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's all,
I think that if we could get renderings, a site plan is one thing, but maybe even separated out site plan, so it's not, it's hard to read. I mean, I am not trained to read a site plan. Okay? So, believe it or not, some of it's a little bit much.
Yeah, I'd be happy to sit with you afterwards. We can go through, I've got a little bit bigger paper. I can get the laptop out, whatever time you
Yeah.
guys have.
yeah.
But
I'd be
I
happy to sit
do
down and go
believe
through it.
like physical renderings and visuals like this is what helps us. Cause you know, this is a committee of citizens and people who are passionate about the area and care about what it looks like, but we're not trained to read those. So there is a level of, you know, balance that
Sure. Yeah, we'll be happy to stick
helps
around and
us
go
look
through
at it a little differently.
Okay, so let's make a motion to continue.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, aye. All right, we will continue that. Any unfinished business or old business?
I have an old business matter. I would like to maybe see if there's a way that we either as a committee, or separately could talk to staff. This relates to, the parking question that was raised, during the Fishers Elementary School, project review that we had last meeting. You know, I see merit, in having more parking be available along Lantern Road, and I'll reference not just where the school is, but down at, I forget what it's called now, the Big Lugs or whatever it is, the new restaurant, outdoor
Kingdom.
venue.
Got you.
Yeah, Kingdom. I mean, I've been there several times, and parking is a real problem around that. And what I'd like to do is just have either some sort of, you know, meeting or discussion about that, because I think it's important for businesses that are locating along Lantern to have parking available. And, you know, unfortunately, on one side just doesn't seem to be sufficient. So I know that's a bigger discussion, and I don't know how to best do that, but I wanted to at least voice that.
Thanks, Rich. We'll put that in the notes and follow up on that after the meeting. Go ahead.
My question on that, Ross, could you get with engineering and, because I know there was some things about the width of Lantern Road.
Yeah,
and
so I can talk on
especially that
this.
side.
Okay.
This is directly in response to the elementary school renovations. The elementary school has 3 access points along Lantern Road, and his engineering has looked at, you know, where parking is adjacent to specifically Lantern and Morgan, how close it is to intersections, and working with the school district on having them dedicate not only the right-of-way that we're requesting for the sidewalk, but additional right-of-way was not part of the school district's site plan. Now, the school district is providing a substantial amount of surface parking for their use, but we did not push any further on-street parking simply because it wasn't part of what they were looking for, and the right-of-way that we were already requesting. Engineering also looked at the spacing with the 3 entrance points, and the amount of on-street parking we were going to get specifically in front of the school was not enough merited from the engineering perspective. But I'm happy to continue to work with the TEM and to try to push the school district. But they are the school district, and we're excited that they're reinvesting in that school and not moving it altogether.
You know, I guess for me, it's not just about, you know, the parking along in front of the school, it's the, you know, the street parking along that corridor there. You know, let's say from South Point to 116th Street. I may be wrong, but it seemed to me like there was something with the width and, you know, in relation to where roads met into it and stuff, that putting street parking on the east side of the street wasn't going to work out in many cases. But if we could get some type of engineering report.
I can share an exhibit that we had A&F put together on street on that whole corridor and different examples. Yeah, Rich?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to maybe add some additional clarity to what Celine was saying. I agree. I think it's a bigger discussion than just in front of the school. But I think there are ways, if there's not adequate right-of-way in place, that as properties come before the city for redevelopment, that additional right-of-way is granted. I just think it's a concern that doesn't relate to any one party, but really is important to, you know, what I think we hope to see along Lander Road. So I apologize. I'll mute again. I'm at a restaurant.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay.
We can put something together with engineering, and maybe they can come after our special meeting and kind of give a rundown of what the thoughts are on street outside of just maybe active projects.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further staff communications?
No further staff communications.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, meeting adjourned.